discuss tonight. And I know when we're in a relationship with our partners and conflict ensues and emotions run high, people in the relationship don't really know how to take an appropriate adult time out. They think that usually what ends up happening is they end up leaving the argument and being angry for a few days and giving each other the silent treatment and then resuming back to life as normal. That's not the way to take a time out. In fact, that just festers and builds more heightened emotions. So to take an effective time out, what needs to take place is when the people in the conflict are having a problem is that they tell one another that they need to take some emotional space. So taking emotional space definitely means going into your separate corners, recomposing yourself, calming each other down, calming yourself down, and coming to a point where you then rejoin and reassess to see if your partner is ready to resolve the issues at hand. If your partner says, no, I'm not, I'm still angry, I'm still upset, I'm not ready to resolve the issue, then you allow for a little bit more time. I wouldn't go more than 24 hours for anger to ensue because you want the problem to definitely resolve. So basically, you get to a point where you both are sitting down and you are calmed down now and your emotions are low. And so when emotions run low and anger runs low, your rational thinking and your common sense definitely increases. So you're able to have more of a meditative conversation. So basically, that's how you take a time out. You resolve the issues in a calm, systemic manner, and you don't ever go to bed angry or upset, and try to resolve the issues at hand. So many times what happens is people don't resolve the issues and the issues get thrown under the carpet and it builds and builds and builds. And nothing gets resolved, and people walk away from the relationship as nothing gets resolved. So coming back and addressing the issues and stating to the person in your relationship that I want to resolve this issue, can we take a time out in order which to do so, and taking the time out and then resolving issues is the key to having an appropriate adult time out. So that's one of my tips that I want to give on how to take an appropriate time out when couples are feeling angered or heightened or emotional. Go on with Lori.
Okay, thank you. All right, one of the things that I specialize in is actually infidelity recovery. Yes, you heard that right. A lot of people come into me right after they discovered that their partner is doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And one of the main questions I get is, well, what is infidelity? That's a huge spectrum. It can be anything from contacting an old flame on Facebook to having inappropriate conversations late at night that your partner doesn't know about, to the good old classic stuff that a lot of people believe is actually infidelity. And can a couple get over infidelity? Yes. What does it take? What it takes is for people to want to be able to move past the affair, but they have to want it as much as they want their next breath. So three things like that, 3 tips I usually talk about regarding how to recover from an affair. What I do in my office is I have 7 steps that I have my couples go through very slowly. It takes about 3 to 6 months. And 3 of the 7 steps are to make sure that whoever was the person that performed any kind of form of infidelity shows genuine remorse. And genuine remorse is not, I'm sorry, I already said I'm sorry, now get over it. That's not genuine remorse. Genuine remorse, of course, involves tears, lots of tears, and being able to show your partner that you truly empathize with the pain that you put them through. Another of the 7 steps I have them go through is going to be to have the partner stop lying. Stop lying is anything from lying about, I stopped at the gym on the way home from work. No, I didn't really stop at the gym, I stopped at Target. All the little lies have to completely go away. So that's going to be a very important thing to do because you want to try to rebuild the trust with your partner. The third thing is that your life must be an open book. One of the red flags to any kind of infidelity is if all of a sudden your partner comes home, close the phone, face down. They change their passcode on the phone. And a lot of times with the women in the room, we all know that we have a pretty good intuition, yes? And a lot of times my women come in and they go, you know what, I have a funny feeling that my partner's doing something they shouldn't do. 99 times out of 100, they're right. So again, one of the things that I have my couples do is to make sure that their life is an open book, meaning provide your passcode to your partner, give them any receipts that they ask for, give them email passwords, any kind of passwords that they request, and better yet is actually to do any of that before they request it. And again, that's one of the things you have to do to rebuild trust. The last of the 7 steps is for the person who got cheated on. That last step is going to be to make sure that they're able to forgive their partner, which is not an easy thing to do. Because to be able to forgive someone who betrayed you takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength and being able to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's not an easy thing to do. So the last step is for the person who got cheated on to be able to forgive their spouse. And those are 3 of the 7 things that I do to help my couples recover from an affair. Coach Kathy?
Okay, I'm going to talk about academic success. We all want our kids to make good grades, but what happens when they start having problems in school? It's more than just being disappointed and not making the grade, because when they have a year or 2 years where they become unsuccessful, it affects their self-esteem, and then it kind of cascades into this I don't like school thing, I don't feel like I can be successful. And there's a lot at risk here, because when they start feeling that way and they don't want to go to school anymore, and then you have to go to work, you don't ever know what they're doing, where they are, and then they start hanging around friends who also don't make school a priority. And then this becomes a very painful situation because it limits their options. There are so many things that they're not going to be able to do if they don't have a certain amount of academic success. And in the extreme, I've seen children that can't become independent. All right, they're 25, 30 years old, 35, it's not cute anymore. They're on your sofa, they're an adult, and they're just there, and they're not making any attempts to get any jobs because they can't find a job because they don't have any background. They have no educational qualifications for a job. And in very extreme cases, kids get desperate for money, they want to move out, and then they start making really bad decisions, and it can lead to legal problems. And so I have seen this happen with people I know. I've seen this as a coach when people don't get to me soon enough, and it becomes a ball of bad activity that just is like a snowball. So most of the time, though, when people come to me and their child is not doing well academically, it's a matter of disorganization. It sounds very simple, but that's the problem a lot of times. A lot of times the schools will give the kid an agenda, and they don't like the agenda, it's not for them, or they have the agenda in the backpack and they don't use it. And what I do is I work with the kids on what kind of agenda is best for them and how to use it. Because you can't do the work if you don't know what the work is and when it's due. A lot of times I've had kids who actually do the work and they don't hand it in on time. Why? Because nothing is written down. And then sometimes they just resist the idea of the agenda, and I try to get them over that. Other times, we have some very creative children I work with, and they have papers in their backpack in every compartment. It's like you open it up and it's almost scary. You don't know what's going to come out, really. All right? And so what I encourage them to do is just have 1 3-ring binder, and then have tabs, divider tabs, where all the science papers go in one section, all the English papers go in another section, etc. And then when they do notebooks checks, all they have to do is to go to that section, put it in the folder. Teacher's happy, they're happy, they get a good notebook grade, everybody's happy. So that's a couple of suggestions I have With academic success, a lot of times it starts with disorganization. If they can become more organized and that they see that the result is that they're getting better grades for not a whole lot more effort, and then their parents are off their back, they can see the benefit of it, and it can lead to better grades and better performance.
It's just like reinforcing positive
Right.
behaviors, absolutely.
Right, and these are things they're going to need in the workplace anyway.
Right.
If you show up for work and you have some bag and it has 10 million reports in it, your boss is not going to be too impressed with you. You're not going to know where you put all your good work. So I think it's all about building good habits for later on.
Absolutely.
Kids don't become independent and just outgrow things all of a sudden. I see a lot of parents that have wishful thinking, oh, he's doing this, oh, but it's just a stage. Well, I have friends who've had kids in the stage for like about 5 years now, and their friends are out of college, they are in relationships, they have jobs, and, this kid is home playing video games in his room because he can't do anything else. It's heartbreaking, when the academic success problem is not addressed.
Which leads to my next tip, and that's talking about the workplace and the stresses that come about with the workplace. Every workplace has their own environmental culture, where they talk about supervisors. There's usually a chain of command, and what happens when you don't get along with your supervisor, or you don't get along with your peer or your coworker. That induces a lot of stress for people because we spend the majority of our time at work, and we have to deal with people that may be difficult to deal with. So what do we do in situations like this? Well, what usually ends up happening is it leads to getting completely apathetic and burnout. When I talk about being apathetic in the workplace, it's like almost a sense of not really caring anymore about what it is that you're doing, and just kind of just doing without emotion. No passion, no love, no charismatic desire to be at the job, just nothing. Almost like a numbness comes over. And so to avoid that from happening, you have to start off by identifying the first things, which are the stressors that lead to burnout. So before there is burnout, there is little signs and signals that lead to burnout. And we have to start identifying what they are. Can't get out of bed. You're exhausted. You don't feel like doing anything pleasurable. You feel like you're becoming more and more depressed because of the workplace. You can't get along with your family members. Your workplace bleeds now into your personal life, which then causes a problem. So one of the things that I work with as a professional developer with organizations and the EAP, which is an employee assistance program, which some organizations have this benefit for their employees as a way to help their employees seek therapeutic intervention, is I talk to them about the relationships that they have with their supervisors, what they might be doing to be a little bit more collaborative with their coworkers, how to reduce stress from the job and incorporate more pleasurable activities in their lives so they have some stress outlets so they can utilize that in order for them not to get to the point of burnout. The whole purpose is not to get to that point of burnout, is not to get to that point, and you find out by recognizing the stressors that come along with the job. So to avoid burnout, you deal with knowing the stressors, knowing what comes along with the stressors, knowing behavioral changes and mood changes that take place personally and professionally, and trying to overcome that by maybe having a sit down with somebody that you are in a conflict with at work, having another person involved as a mediator, going to human resources and discussing some avenues that can take place that will help with employee assistance programs, having the supervisor refer to EAP, which is counseling sessions for their employees. So there's preventative ways to avoid burnout in a workplace. There's definitely ways to strive and love what you do and have people be appreciative of what you do and how you do it, and get that positive reinforcement that Kathy was talking about, and starting from academic and going into your job level. So that's a part and parcel of how to avoid and prevent burnout in the workplace, and to inspire yourself to be a little bit more collaborative and enjoy the activities that you want to do in order to have stress outlets.
One thing I wanted to add, I think there's certain personality types that tend to get stressed out and burned out more than others, and it starts like around high school. They have the opportunity to take all these AP classes and international baccalaureate classes, and then you see them studying until 1 and 2 at night and crying and freaking out, and it becomes like a bad habit. It's almost like they get addicted to the adrenaline rush of, oh, I've got to get all this done and all the competition, and it's not healthy at all.
Because what happens in that situation is there's a buildup, and the person eventually becomes overwhelmed, breaks down, and then you have major problems. Depression can come in, panic can come in, psychological issues, mental health issues that can come in that will break the person down. So.
Thank you. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, does anybody remember that good old book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Okay. This book is still very relevant. All the information is still 100% relevant today. This is one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, because so many times my couples will come in, or as well as my individuals, and they'll talk about their partner who doesn't necessarily come into counseling. And this book can pretty much predict exactly what everybody's going to be saying. So of course, at this point, after 25 years, I kind of know where everybody's going, what everyone's saying, and what everybody's issue is, as well as knowing what everybody's solution is. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you 3 tips about the differences between men and women. I also highly recommend this book, Mars and Venus in Touch, Enhancing the Passion with Good Communication. I highly recommend this book to anybody that's ever been in any kind of significant relationship.
What is it called?
Mars and Venus in Touch, Enhancing the Passion with Great Communication. I've heard it's a little difficult to get. I think I found it on Amazon. All right, 3 of the many differences between men and women. The first one is women physiologically in our brains, we have twice as many connections as men. So we have no choice but to explain this book in twice as many words as a man does. Can anybody relate to that? We have no choice. Every now and then, probably about 10-15% of my couples, they'll have a role reversal. A woman will have a little more of a man's brain and vice versa. But usually us women, we have no choice but to explain this book twice as long as a man would. And a lot of times the men don't have a lot of patience. Have you ever heard someone of the opposite sex say, okay, come on, what's the bottom line, get to the point? Yes, that's because they're going from what their brain says. They have no choice but to do that. But once I explain this to my couples, that can help them get a little bit more insight and be a little bit more patient if their wife is rambling about all the great sales they had at Target, and the husband is thinking the game is on in 10 minutes. I really don't care about the sales they have at Target. So that is one of the differences, that we have twice as many connections as men do in our brains. The second one is women have, I always compare it to or talk about a vat of words inside of us. And a lot of times when it seems like we're rambling, what we're doing is we're figuring it out as we're talking.
So we're processing.
Exactly, we're processing as we're talking. So we are kind of emptying our vat of words, and every now and then a man will make one of the cardinal rule mistakes of interrupting a woman. You cannot interrupt a woman, because what happens is all the words that we just said get sucked right back into the vat, and we have no choice but to start over. And then once you start over, the man says, I know you already said that. And if the man doesn't quite understand that that's how a woman is made, that right there can derail an entire conversation. and a whole fight can happen. What do you mean? Why do you have to keep repeating that? Well, why do you interrupt me? So right there, the whole conversation can be derailed, and that's when people can go from 0 to 60 if they have any anger issues. But the more men and women understand the differences between men and women, the easier it is. Also regarding that VAT is usually the first 80% does come across as rambling. But once we women get to the bottom 20%, that's the good stuff. That's the meat and potatoes. That's when we are processing, when we're figuring out exactly why it is we're rambling and what our solution is. So men need to allow the women to get to the bottom 20% so we can figure out on our own exactly what the solution is. Which leads me to the next thing. Men are programmed to find solutions. They are task-oriented. They want to know what's the problem so we can immediately start figuring out the solution. And thankfully they were built like that, because back in cavemen days when they were running out trying to capture the beast to bring it home for dinner, they didn't have time to sit and process and figure it out. They had this beast coming at them. They had to immediately kill it, bring it home, the wife would cook it up. So they want to know what's the issue, what's the problem, how can I solve it? Many times women don't want someone to solve their problem. They just want someone to listen. They want someone to say, yes, really, what else? Tell me more. And when I say that to my men in counseling, they go, oh my gosh, are you serious? I have to do that? And the answer is you don't have to, but if you want things to go smoothly with you and your wife, you do have to. So you absolutely have that choice. So those are three of the many differences between men and women. Okay, Kathy?
Okay, I'm going to talk about taking the parent-child conversations from confrontational to collaborative. And it's better if you can start when they're very young, and you make the rules together as a family, and then they buy into the rules, because then everybody's on the same page, and you talk about the rules, why they're important, and the consequences. When my kids were little, we had a sheet, we had it posted with the rules, they did the illustrations, it was a whole activity. Obviously, if your kids are older, they're not going to do that, but you can still talk about the rules and agree on what they are and why they are important. Whenever you can get their input, it's going to help. Everyone loves it when someone asks them their opinion, and kids all day long are usually being told in school what they need to do. So when we deal with them as parents, if we can talk to them if there's a problem that comes up, let's say it could be regarding grades or something they did, you could talk to them, well, why do you think we're fighting so much? Why do you think you're not getting the results in school that, that you're not getting, that you want? What do you think that you could do differently? Okay, so you're not criticizing them, you're really getting them to brainstorm. And then ask permission. How can I support you? And this becomes very important the older they get, because now I'm dealing with adult children, and they're really adults, but then they're still kids, and then they come home and they tell you all these different situations, and you have to be very careful about how you approach it. But because we have a history of dealing with our kids in our family like this, I ask them, now that they're adults, that are you concerned about this? Do you think this is a problem? Yes. Would you like some ideas or some options on how to solve it? And then at that point, they can say yes or no. And if they say no, I have to zip it, okay? Basically, And if they say yes, I can offer some ideas. Say, do you think any of those things would work? Okay. Now, when our kids are younger, we have to be able to keep them safe. So there's certain things they can't decide that they're going to have a 3 a.m. curfew, for example. It has to be, reasonable. But I think when a parent enlists the child in the whole process of talking about an issue, asking their opinion, obviously you are the parent. But there's a difference between being authoritative and being authoritarian. Okay, authoritative, you're in charge. Authoritarian, you can come across as a dictator. All right? You definitely want to be authoritative. You don't need to be like a dictator. And that way you can keep the dialogue open, because once these kids shut down, it's not a good thing. Then they shut you out and you